Chapter 19. As the plane touched down in Wichita, Madison's belly did a loop-de-loop. It had been 62 days since she'd laid eyes on Randall, and it would be another day until she finally got to. At least he was closer. Her mother would be there to pick her up. They would head home, where she could relax for one day, then she'd drive to Star to see him. But that didn't stop her from wishing it was Randall meeting her. He'd been sorry, apologized so many times, but he couldn't be there. His truck was in the shop and wouldn't be out until the next day. She'd been so excited to see him that after they'd hung up, she'd cried. Then she prayed for a miracle because being without Randall had turned into a physical ache. He'd become a part of her. Not a day went by where she didn't talk to him, usually for hours. The plane came to a rest by the gate and the hatch opened. People all around her flooded into the narrow aisle, headed for the door. She waited until most everyone was out of their seats so she wouldn't get jostled. Thankfully, she only had her carry-on to lug through the airport. There had been no need to pack a big bag this time. A self-storage mover was hauling everything she owned back to Kansas. All her belongings would arrive in 2 days, hopefully in the same condition in which she packed them. Her mother had already secured her an apartment, and though Mom didn't agree with it, had called it too much temptation, the apartment was in Star, near Randall. The strap of her carry-on cut into her shoulder as she made her way off the plane. Panic gripped her at the size of the airport and all the people milling about around her. Her mother had said she would be waiting near the car rentals. Though she'd been to the Wichita airport more times than any other, it was still unfamiliar, and after a few moments of indecision, she finally found the sign for car rentals. Except her mother wasn't there. Madison stood near a bright green rental sign and searched the crowd. A man in a huge cowboy hat collected his keys from the attendant and turned to her. "You about ready to get out of here?" That voice. She looked up at his face, and Randall's smile took her breath away. She dropped her bag to the floor as she catapulted into his waiting arms, knocking his absurd hat off his head. He crushed her close, and she never wanted to leave his embrace. "I can't believe you're here." Her words were almost lost in his neck. "Turns out your mom has some great ideas of her own." He chuckled as she slid back down to her feet. "My mom? How were you able to get a hold of my mom?" She'd told Randall about her parents when they were at Dawson Creek Ranch, but since they weren't there, it made no sense to tell him more. "I looked them up. Weren't hard to find. I get along with your dad and brothers pretty well, and they've helped me finish up my spread quicker. Good people." Good people. He liked her family, and now she wanted to meet his. "That's completely unfair. When do I get to meet your family?" He took her hand and kissed her knuckles. How she wished they weren't standing in the crowded airport. She wanted so much more than that. "Soon enough, little lady, soon enough." Was he talking about her meeting his family, or had he just read her mind? He picked up her bag by the handle and draped his arm around her waist, looping his thumb in one of her belt loops. "I've missed you." She'd missed him like crazy, though they'd talked more every day since she'd left than they had when she was with him. "Me too." He led her out to a red Durango. She wanted to protest. Star was so far from the airport, and now he'd have to drive all the way back there tomorrow to return it, wasting precious time together. "Don't worry. There's a rental place in Star, but we aren't going home quite yet anyway. You haven't asked how I got to the airport to rent a car, so I'll tell you. Your family is here to celebrate. They brought me, but I asked them if I could drive you home. I'd like you to myself for the drive, if that's all right with you." Celebrating? Something about that word made her nervous with anticipation. Randall sighed and helped her up into the passenger seat, then came around to the driver's side. He climbed in and put the keys on the dashboard. "Randall, what's wrong?" Why would he sigh like that? Why did he look so scared? Randall wasn't scared of anything. He reached for her hand and squeezed it. Your family is hoping to celebrate. His voice cut out and he swiped his hand across his forehead. She realized they'd left his hat back on the airport floor. He patted the front pocket of his western shirt and dug inside. When he pulled his hand out, he held a ring between his thumb and forefinger. I love you, Madison. I can't wait anymore, and I don't want to ever watch you walk away again. Please, let me stay with you always. He acted as if choosing him was a chore. Madison slid over on the bench seat and took the ring from his fingers. It was spectacular, with a platinum band and a round, brilliant cut diamond, but that didn't matter half as much as the man holding it. You don't have to do this to get me to stay, Randall. I'm not leaving. You don't have to bribe me to keep you. I love you. She nestled into his chest and he held her close. I'm not bribing you, Madison. I'm praying you'll... She backed away, eager to heal the hurt she'd just caused. She would never turn him away. Then yes, I'll let you stay with me always. He slipped the ring on her finger and slid his hands down to her elbows to draw her to him. His eyes were dark with desire. In her silly novice Christian prayers, she'd asked for Randall to understand that she hadn't accepted faith to win him, but because of him and his own growing relationship with Christ. She wanted part of that, with him. He tipped her face to his, and when the kiss wasn't enough, when she couldn't get close enough, he pulled her onto his lap. Their kisses had always warmed her blood to molten intensity, but after 2 months apart, he couldn't satiate her desire. Only when Randall hit the horn with his elbow did they pull away. Madison rested her head against Randall's chest as a giggle of pure happiness bubbled from her lips. Life on the Kansas prairie would be so much more exciting than New York ever had been. The end. This has been Hometown Hero, Dawson's Valley Book 1. Written by Carrie Trumbo. Narrated by Melly Williams.